Liam Parker, the man who no longer believes in love. From a young man with nothing in hand, Liam Parker rose to become a successful millionaire, owning a real estate investment corporation with significant influence in the market. But behind the facade of success and expensive suits, he is a lonely man. A failed marriage with a betraying wife left him disillusioned with love. To Liam, emotions are nothing but a risky game where the one who loves more is the one who loses. He lives by his principles, always keeps his promises, and never allows himself to show weakness to anyone. Catherine Bennett, the woman who was beaten by life but never fell. Catherine Bennett was once a passionate and ambitious young woman. Since childhood, she had loved painting and dreamed of having her own art exhibition. But that dream had to be put on hold when she married Leo, the man she loved and gave birth to their son, also named Leo. However, fate did not grant her a peaceful life for long. Leo died suddenly in an accident, leaving behind a huge debt from failed investments. With no other choice, Catherine set aside her passion for painting and threw herself into survival. She took on various jobs, from working as a cafe waitress and selling online to accepting low-paid commission paintings, just to provide for her son. During those difficult years, Catherine had only two things keeping her from breaking down: the love she had for Leo and the belief that one day she would paint again, though she had no idea when that dream would become a reality. 10 years ago, back when Liam Parker was just a young man with nothing, he experienced bitter failures. He was ambitious, yet arrogant and impulsive, eager to prove himself in the cutthroat world of business. Liam once started a small company, pouring all his savings and effort into it, but one major mistake cost him everything. His business partners abandoned him, his friends disappeared, and the investors who once praised him no longer answered his calls. In a single night, he hit rock bottom. That was when Daniel Bennett appeared. Liam vividly remembers that afternoon. He was wandering the streets, exhausted and weighed down by failure. A small roadside cafe emitted the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, but he didn't even have enough money for a cup. Instead, he sat on a park bench outside, silently watching people pass by. "Are you all right?" A deep, warm voice pulled Liam out of his chaotic thoughts. He looked up and met the kind eyes of a middle-aged man, Daniel Bennett. A well-known painter in the art world, Daniel was not only skilled at creating masterpieces, but also at seeing through people. When he looked at Liam, he didn't just see a failed young man. He saw someone with potential, standing on the thin line between giving up and fighting on. "Come have a cup of coffee with me," Daniel said. And before Liam could refuse, he had already ordered an extra cup. That day, amidst the soft jazz music and the scent of coffee, Liam let go of his pride for the first time and spoke about his failures. He never imagined himself sharing his setbacks with a stranger. Yet something about Daniel made him trust him instinctively. When he finished, Daniel simply smiled. "You're still young. Failure isn't scary. What's scary is letting it define you. Promise me you won't do that." Then he handed Liam a check. Liam was stunned. It was a large sum, enough to start over. "You don't have to pay me back. I'm investing in you, not the numbers in your bank account." Liam couldn't believe it. Daniel didn't ask for any return, no contract, no obligations. Only one promise: you may become a successful man, but never lose your kindness. Years later, Liam fulfilled the trust Daniel had placed in him. He rebuilt his career, rose step by step, and eventually became one of the city's most successful businessmen. But he never forgot the man who had helped him stand back up. Occasionally, he would visit Daniel's art studio, listening to his stories about art and life. To Liam, Daniel was more than just a benefactor. He was a role model of kindness, something Liam always aspired to have. Yet time spares no one. One cold winter day, Liam received news that Daniel was terminally ill. He rushed to the hospital immediately. The once strong, resilient man now lay weak and frail, but his eyes still held the same warmth. Liam sat by his bedside, gripping his thin hand tightly. "You didn't have to come," Daniel smiled weakly. "I couldn't not come," Liam replied, his voice hoarse with emotion. They sat in silence for a long time until Daniel gently squeezed Liam's hand and whispered, "You kept your promise, but now I have one more request for you." Liam sensed the weight in his voice and nodded. If possible, take care of Catherine for me. If she ever needs help, help her the way I helped you. Liam froze. He had never met Catherine, but he knew how much Daniel loved his daughter. I promise, Liam said. Daniel gave a faint smile. I hope she never needs your help, but life is unpredictable, Liam. If one day she needs a shoulder to lean on, please be there for her. Liam remained silent for a long time before gripping Daniel's hand firmly. I promise. That promise stayed in Liam's mind, though he never thought he would have to fulfill it. At that time, Catherine was happily married with her husband and young son. Over a year ago, Liam received news about Catherine. Her husband had passed away. She was raising her son alone. Her husband's debt was suffocating her life. Liam read the report on Catherine's situation, and he saw himself in her, a young person who had lost everything, standing at the edge of collapse or survival. The only difference was that, this time, no one was helping her, and he would be that person. Liam looked at the photo of Catherine and her son, Leo, a small boy with bright eyes, just like his mother. And he knew it was time to keep his promise. But he also knew that if he simply offered her money, she would refuse out of pride. The only way to help her without making her feel pitied was to propose marriage. Catherine sat at the small dining table in her cramped apartment, staring intently at the numbers on the bill in front of her. The debts never seemed to decrease. Instead, they only kept piling up. Rent, utilities, her son's school fees. Everything was a burden she had to carry alone. Her husband, Daniel, had passed away 2 years ago, leaving not just grief, but also a mountain of debt from his failed business ventures. She had tried everything to manage, but life seemed determined to push her to the edge. The doorbell rang. Catherine frowned, wondering who could be visiting at this hour. When she opened the door, she froze. Liam Parker. She had heard of him before. He was one of the most successful businessmen in the city, the owner of a vast real estate and financial investment empire. But more importantly, he was the man her father had once spoken of before he passed away. A symbol of resilience, someone who had climbed from nothing to dazzling success. A man she never thought she would meet. Liam stood there, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his steel gray eyes cold, yet carrying an almost imperceptible gentleness. He glanced around her small apartment, his gaze briefly touching the peeling walls and the worn-out dining table. We need to talk, he said in a deep, authoritative voice. Catherine stepped aside, allowing him in but keeping a safe distance. There was something strange about his presence. They had never met before, so why was he here? She studied him, trying to guess his intentions. You're struggling, Liam stated bluntly, wasting no time. I can help. Catherine tensed. She didn't like how he spoke as if he knew everything about her. I don't need your pity, she replied coldly. Liam observed her for a moment before responding. This isn't pity. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. She narrowed her eyes, waiting for him to explain. You need money to clear your debts and take care of your son. I need a wife to maintain my public image. Liam leaned back in his chair, his deep eyes studying her reaction. A contract marriage. I'll pay off your debts and ensure your son has a better life. In return, you will be my wife in the eyes of the public. Catherine's heart pounded. She looked at him as if he had just proposed something unthinkable. You're joking, right? She let out a dry laugh. But when she saw the unwavering determination in his gaze, she realized he was completely serious. She shot up from her chair, wrapping her arms around herself in a defensive stance. What kind of woman do you think I am? Just because I'm struggling, you assume I'd jump at an outrageous offer like this? Liam remained unfazed by her anger. I don't assume anything. I'm simply presenting a practical solution. You can refuse, but think about your son. Do you really want him to continue living like this? Catherine turned to look at her 5-year-old son, peacefully sleeping in the next room. She thought about the countless sleepless nights, the exhausting hours of work, the times she had to say no when he asked for something as small as a toy. But marrying a man she didn't love just for financial security? Was that a price worth paying? You only need me as your wife for appearances, she asked, skeptical. Liam nodded, but there was something in his eyes she couldn't quite decipher. You don't need to love me. You don't have to do anything except accompany me to important events. The contract will last for at least a year, after which we can end it if you wish. Catherine closed her eyes, trying to think clearly. He was right. Her biggest concern was Leo. Her son couldn't live like this forever. This wasn't what she had wanted. But did she really have a choice? After a long silence, Catherine lifted her gaze, her eyes now filled with determination. If I agree, she said slowly, do you guarantee my son will have a better life? Liam nodded. I will ensure he receives the best education, lives in a safe home, and never has to worry about money again. Catherine bit her lip. She had never wanted to depend on anyone, but she wasn't alone. She had a child to think about. All right, she whispered, feeling as if she were signing a contract with fate. I'll marry you. Liam gave a small nod, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. But as he looked at her, he knew she hadn't fully grasped what she had just agreed to. She didn't realize that this marriage would change their lives forever. Because they weren't just two strangers entering a contractual agreement. They were two lonely souls, unknowingly about to find solace in each other in ways they never expected. Booker. Life can be overwhelming, but here we share heartfelt tales to bring you peace, joy, and inspiration. Your support, every comment, like, and follow, means the world to us. It motivates us to create more meaningful and uplifting stories just for you. Did our latest story touch your heart? Leave a I am happy in the comments if you agree. Subscribe now and be part of a community that spreads love, kindness, and positivity. Let's make every day a little brighter together. The towering iron gate slowly swung open, revealing a grand mansion standing proudly amidst its vast estate. At first glance, Catherine was overwhelmed by its sheer magnificence and luxury, a world entirely different from the one she had always known. Parker Mansion was built on such an expansive piece of land that she couldn't even see where the garden ended. Ancient trees lined the marble-paved driveway, their towering presence exuding an air of timeless grandeur. Vibrant foreign roses bloomed proudly under the golden afternoon sun, and at the heart of the garden, a massive fountain stood, intricately carved with angelic figures, its crystal-clear waters flowing melodiously, adding to the tranquil yet regal atmosphere. The three-story mansion loomed with towering marble columns, its wide glass windows reflecting the hues of the setting sun. It was breathtakingly beautiful, yet strangely cold. Catherine instinctively tightened her grip on her son's small hand. Leo's tiny fingers squeezed back, but his bright eyes shimmered with pure excitement. Mommy, is this really our home? Leo's voice rang out, filled with wonder, his gaze sparkling like a million stars. Catherine looked down at her son, forcing a smile even as her mind swirled with uncertainty. Could a place like this ever truly belong to them? Or was she merely stepping into a world too foreign, too distant from the one she had ever dared to imagine? Beside her, Liam Parker stood tall and imposing, the very embodiment of a man who belonged to such a place. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, his deep blue-gray eyes sharp and unreadable, silently observing her every reaction. Anything you and your son need, speak to the housekeeper, he stated in a calm yet authoritative tone. Your room is on the second floor. Leo's is right next to yours. Catherine only nodded, saying nothing more. No matter what, her life had changed the moment she agreed to this marriage. The heavy, intricately carved wooden doors swung open, revealing a breathtaking entrance hall. The ceiling soared high, adorned with an enormous crystal chandelier that bathed the space in a dazzling glow. The polished marble floor gleamed beneath the golden light, reflecting the opulence of the grand columns, the towering oil paintings, and the sweeping twin staircase that curled elegantly toward the upper floors. Catherine felt overwhelmed. It was all too extravagant, too perfect, too cold. From the moment she stepped inside, she felt utterly out of place. But Leo was entranced. The little boy ran around in excitement, his small hands touching everything with wide-eyed curiosity. Mommy, look! There's a pool! And wow, a library, just like in the movies. Liam stood at a distance, arms crossed, watching their contrasting reactions. He knew that to Leo, this place was like a dream, a real-life castle, filled with wonders beyond his imagination. But to Catherine, it was nothing more than a gilded cage, grand, beautiful, yet foreign and isolating. Catherine took a deep breath and knelt to hold her son's hand. She had no idea what the future held, but at this moment, she knew she had to be strong. For Leo, Catherine had expected her life after marriage to change in some way, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse, but she had never expected it to feel so empty. From the moment she stepped into Parker Mansion, she came to a stark realization. There was an invisible wall between her and Liam, so thick that even their gazes barely reached each other. Liam Parker was a man of rules. He lived in a world of strict schedules, numbers, and strategies, where emotions held no place. He was used to the deafening silence of his vast mansion, where even the ticking of a clock could be heard in the stillness. He was used to solitary dinners, where the only sound was the soft clink of silverware against fine porcelain. He was used to long nights in his study, where the warm glow of his desk lamp remained the only source of light long after the rest of the mansion had succumbed to darkness. Catherine, on the other hand, was different. She had once been a painter, a woman who lived through colors and emotions, pouring her soul into every brushstroke. But reality had forced her to trade her paintbrush for survival, to chase after money so relentlessly that she had forgotten what it felt like to create for herself. She didn't believe in unconditional kindness, and she certainly didn't believe that Liam's proposal had been purely for the sake of his public image. She couldn't understand this man, and he made no effort to help her understand him. Days passed in silence. They barely spoke beyond necessary exchanges, brief questions, short answers, words that carried no weight, no warmth. The first dinner, an awkward encounter. The dining hall was vast, its grandeur emphasized by the long table draped in pristine white linen, bathed in the soft glow of golden chandeliers. Catherine sat across from Liam, staring at the perfectly plated, luxurious dishes before her, hesitant to even pick up her fork. The only one genuinely enjoying the meal was Leo, his small hands eagerly cutting his food, his cheerful chatter filling the otherwise silent room. Catherine, however, merely toyed with her fork, idly nudging the steak on her plate. She felt like a stranger dining in a house that was supposedly her own. Liam glanced at her, his sharp eyes missing nothing. "You don't like the food?" His deep voice cut through the heavy silence. Catherine flinched slightly, surprised that he had initiated a conversation. "No, it's not that. I'm just not used to meals like this." Liam said nothing more. He simply resumed cutting his steak, as if their brief conversation had never happened. Neither of them knew how to bridge the silence, and perhaps neither of them was willing to try. Past midnight, the first conversation. After Leo had fallen into a peaceful sleep, Catherine stepped out into the garden behind the mansion. The night air was crisp, sending a shiver down her spine, but the loneliness in her heart felt far colder. She had never lived in a place so extravagant, yet the grandeur of it did not offer comfort. Instead, it only made her feel even smaller, more out of place. She sighed softly, closing her eyes, letting the cool night breeze brush against her skin. A feeble attempt to ground herself, to find a sense of familiarity in an unfamiliar world. "Can't sleep?" A deep voice drifted through the quiet night, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to see Liam standing a short distance away, his tall frame illuminated by the dim glow spilling from the house. His face was as unreadable as ever, but for the first time, she noticed something in his eyes. Something tired, something almost weary. Catherine let out a small, humorless chuckle. "I'm not used to this place." Liam was silent for a moment before taking a sip from the glass of wine in his hand, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "You will be." A simple sentence, nothing more. Yet in that moment, Catherine realized something she hadn't noticed before. Even though Liam Parker lived in this magnificent mansion, he didn't truly feel at home here. And in that fleeting second, she understood that they were both lonely, each in their own way. A mysterious gift. Catherine had never thought about picking up a paintbrush again. Since the day her husband passed away, painting had become nothing more than a distant memory, a dream she had once immersed herself in, but was forced to abandon for the sake of survival, for the sake of her son. Art was no longer something she could pursue. It was a luxury she had no right to think about. But then one day, Liam walked into the living room, without warning, without explanation, and placed a small key in her hand. "What is this?" Catherine looked up at him, suspicion flickering in her eyes. Liam stood with his arms crossed, his expression as unreadable as ever. But there was something hidden beneath his usual cold gaze, something she couldn't quite decipher. "Go and find out." The car weaved through the bustling streets of the city before turning onto a quieter road. Catherine's confusion deepened as she looked out at the unfamiliar surroundings. This was not a place she had ever visited before. Finally, the car stopped in front of a modest yet striking building. Large glass windows reflected the golden sunlight, and the pristine white walls exuded an air of elegance and warmth. Holding the key tightly, she stepped forward, hesitated for a brief moment, then slowly turned the lock. The door swung open, and in that instant, her entire world stood still. Before her was a fully equipped art studio, a vast space bathed in natural light, with golden rays streaming through the tall windows, illuminating every corner. Along the walls, easels stood waiting, each one pristine, as if anticipating the return of an artist. Paintbrushes, palettes, tubes of oil paint, all meticulously arranged, ready to be used. It was perfect. It was as if this place had been waiting for her all along, a reminder of a forgotten dream. Catherine stood frozen in place, gripping the key tightly in her trembling fingers. Her heart pounded. She stepped forward, her fingertips brushing against the paintbrushes, feeling the soft bristles, the cool metal frames of the canvases. It had been so long since she felt this. When was the last time she had stood in front of an easel? Before life had pulled her into the whirlwind of survival, before she had to set aside her dreams to fulfill her duties as a mother, before she had lost herself. Her hands trembled as she picked up a brand new palette. The vibrant colors called to her, whispering to a part of her soul that had been buried away. She turned to Liam, her eyes glistening, her voice unsteady. "Did you do this for me?" Liam leaned casually against the doorframe, arms still crossed. His face remained composed, but something in his gaze had softened. "You have talent, Catherine, and I don't want to see you waste it." A simple sentence, yet it shook her to the core. Since the day her husband died, no one had ever said those words to her. No one had mentioned her dreams. No one had seen her as an artist anymore. They only saw a struggling single mother. They saw her hardships, but not her talent, not her passion. But Liam, he saw. He didn't have to do this. He could have let her live a life of comfort, providing everything she needed without a second thought. But he didn't want her to just exist. He wanted her to live, to be independent, to pursue what she loved, to do what she was born to do. Just like how her father had once helped him, Liam was helping her now. Not out of pity, but out of belief. Catherine wanted to ask why. Why did a man like Liam care about her? Why did he remember a dream she had long forgotten? Why did he see something in her that even she was afraid to acknowledge? But when she met his deep, unwavering gaze, she knew there would be no answer. And perhaps she didn't need one. She only needed to know one thing. From today onwards, Catherine would paint again. At first, Catherine remained hesitant. She didn't immediately sit at the easel, nor did she dive into painting right away. Instead, she wandered around the studio, rearranging supplies, picking up brushes only to put them down again. But then one day, without even realizing it, she placed the tip of her brush against the blank canvas. The first strokes were tentative, uncertain, unsteady. But as time passed, they grew more fluid, more natural. The feeling of color, of lines, of creativity slowly returned to her, like a long-lost friend finding its way back. She painted what was most familiar to her, a portrait of Leo laughing joyfully, a landscape of the mansion's garden where she often sat watching the sunset. Liam didn't visit the studio often, but every now and then he would stop by, quietly observing her at work, saying little, yet always present. One evening he arrived while Catherine was deeply engrossed in painting an ocean scene. He stood there for a long while, watching in silence before finally speaking. Why the ocean? Catherine turned to him, a distant longing flickering in her eyes. Because the ocean is where I once felt the freest, before life became too difficult. Liam didn't respond immediately. He simply gazed at the painting, seeing more than just the shades of blue. He saw buried dreams, silent yearning, an unspoken desire for something she had lost. After a moment, he said in a quiet yet resolute voice, I won't let you lose that again. Catherine didn't reply, but something inside her stirred. Ever since she had the studio, Catherine felt an unfamiliar energy awakening within her. Every morning, after dropping Leo off at school, she would come here, immerse herself in a world of colors and art. For the first time in years, she no longer felt like a woman merely struggling to survive, merely existing to pay debts and raise her son. She was alive. She began accepting small commissions, portraits, landscapes, custom artwork. Slowly but surely, word of her talent spread. Then one day something happened that she never thought possible. A local gallery reached out, offering to showcase her work. Catherine could hardly believe it. She was living her passion again, and it was all because of Liam. She still didn't fully understand why he had helped her so much, why he had gone out of his way to push her back toward her dreams. But she couldn't deny the truth. Because of him, she had found herself again. And every time she completed a new painting, every time she saw the proud, beaming smile on Leo's face as he excitedly told everyone, My mom is an artist. Catherine felt warmth filling her heart like never before. The first dinner, when silence was broken. Life in Liam Parker's mansion had never revolved around the concept of family meals. Every day he was consumed by back-to-back meetings, high-stakes deals, and if he had dinner at all, it was often a quick meal prepared by the chef, sometimes eaten right at his desk. Catherine understood that. From the moment she and Leo moved in, she had instinctively kept her distance from Liam's way of life. She didn't want to impose, she didn't want to disrupt his routine. Every evening, she and Leo would have their own simple meals in the smaller kitchen, quietly cleaning up before Liam even returned home. Most nights, by the time they finished, he still wasn't back. But tonight, just as Catherine was clearing the table, the grand entrance doors swung open. Liam had come home earlier than usual. Leo's eyes widened with excitement. Without hesitation, the little boy ran over, eagerly pulling out a chair for Liam as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Mommy's cooking is really good. Uncle Liam, you have to try it. Leo beamed, his voice filled with pure enthusiasm, completely oblivious to the lingering awkwardness between the two adults. Liam hesitated for a moment, as though the idea of sitting down for dinner with them had never even crossed his mind. Catherine, caught off guard, felt an unexpected wave of nervousness, but she refused to let Leo's excitement go unanswered. Sit down if you like, she said evenly, her voice composed. Liam glanced at Leo's hopeful expression before slowly pulling out the chair and settling into the seat. A dinner he never planned for. At first, the atmosphere was awkward. Liam had never experienced a meal like this before. One that wasn't a business meeting, wasn't an obligation, but simply dinner. A simple, shared moment between people living under the same roof. He observed Catherine, watching her under the warm glow of the dining room lights. Right now, she wasn't the struggling single mother fighting to stay afloat. She wasn't the woman he had entered a contractual marriage with. She was just a mother, a strong, gentle mother, pouring her love into her child. And Leo, his bright-eyed, lively presence filled the room, his laughter genuine, his chatter unfiltered, as if they were truly a family. Catherine, too, found herself glancing at Liam. She had only ever seen him through magazine covers and business headlines, a man always dressed in impeccable suits, his demeanor cold and calculating. But now he was sitting across from her, silently cutting up Leo's steak into small, manageable bites. His movements were effortless, natural, as if he had done this 100 times before. And for the first time, Catherine found herself wondering, who was Liam Parker, really? The first dinner, when silence was broken. After a long pause, Catherine finally decided to speak. Do you always eat dinner alone? Liam, slightly caught off guard, set down his utensils and took a sip of wine. I never even had time for dinner before. His answer was short, but it surprised Catherine. And yet, here you are, eating the meal I cooked. Liam didn't respond immediately. He glanced at Catherine, then at Leo, before finally saying in a low voice, "Tonight is an exception." Leo, oblivious to the subtle tension between the adults, continued to chatter excitedly about school, filling the room with his innocent, carefree stories. And somehow, as the meal went on, Catherine began to feel that this dinner wasn't as awkward as she had expected. Breaking the routine. After dinner, Liam unexpectedly stood up, rolled up his sleeves, and tied an apron around his waist. Then he started washing the dishes. Catherine blinked in astonishment. "What are you doing?" she asked, incredulous. Without looking up, Liam replied calmly, "Washing the dishes." A laugh bubbled from Catherine's lips before she could stop it. "I never imagined a millionaire like you doing something so domestic." Liam shrugged, continuing his task without protest. He didn't deny it. That night, something shifted. The next day, Catherine made a decision. "I'll cook dinner for you too." She stated it as a fact rather than a suggestion. Liam frowned slightly. "You don't have to do that. My work schedule is unpredictable. I rarely eat at home." But Catherine remained firm. "Then whenever you are home, there will always be dinner waiting for you." Liam didn't argue further. He simply looked at her for a long moment, then nodded subtly. And from that day on, Catherine continued cooking dinner every evening. No one could explain why, but somehow their shared meals became more and more frequent. An unexpected invitation. The golden morning sunlight spilled through the large windows, illuminating the breakfast table, where Catherine was preparing a meal for Leo. As usual, Liam descended the stairs with his composed demeanor, ready to leave for an important meeting. But before he could step out, Leo suddenly ran over and grabbed his hand. "Uncle Liam, can you take us to the park today?" Catherine, mid-pour with a glass of milk, nearly spilled it. "Leo, I can take you myself." "But I want Uncle Liam to come too," Leo insisted, his bright eyes practically twinkling with excitement. Catherine instinctively prepared to decline on Liam's behalf. After all, he was a businessman, busy, always occupied. A random park visit surely wouldn't fit into his schedule. But to her shock, Liam responded without hesitation. "All right." Catherine's jaw almost dropped. Leo cheered, clapping his hands in delight, while Catherine could only sigh in mild exasperation. That morning, an entirely unplanned outing was set in motion. The park, a side of Liam she never expected. The park was more crowded than usual, filled with families and the sounds of laughter. Unlike his usual sharp and polished appearance, Liam wasn't wearing a suit today. Instead, he had opted for a simple rolled-up button-down shirt and dark jeans. And strangely, Catherine thought, he seemed a little more approachable. Leo ran across the grassy field, his laughter ringing like chimes in the wind. Then suddenly, his ball rolled toward Liam's feet. Catherine expected Liam to simply pick it up and hand it back. But instead, he bent down, picked up the ball, and with a small, barely perceptible smile, he kicked it back toward Leo. Catherine froze. She had never expected to see Liam Parker, the cold and distant businessman, casually playing soccer with a child. And even more astonishing, he looked natural doing it. Leo burst into delighted laughter, then turned to his mother. "Mommy, come play too." Catherine hesitated, but in the end her son's joy was infectious. She joined in, at first reluctantly, but soon the laughter of her child pulled her into the moment. She ran, she laughed, and for a while she forgot that just a few months ago, Liam Parker was nothing more than a stranger, a moment of warmth. After tiring themselves out, the three of them sat together on a long bench beneath the cool shade of a tree. Liam had bought ice cream for both Catherine and Leo, though his usual stoic demeanor remained unchanged. Catherine looked at him, then suddenly laughed. "Are you always this cold and serious?" Liam raised an eyebrow, glancing at her with mild curiosity. "I'm not cold. I just don't smile often." His response made Catherine laugh even harder. She didn't realize that, in that moment, she looked more radiant than ever. Liam, sitting beside her, silently observed. And then, for the first time, his lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. It was subtle but genuine, as if, for the first time in years, he was truly enjoying a day without business, without stress, just a simple, fleeting moment of happiness. That day they were no longer just two strangers bound by a marriage contract. That day, for the first time, they looked like a real family. Even a millionaire can break down. Lately, Liam had been working at an almost inhuman pace, one meeting after another, endless contracts and high-stakes projects, so much so that he lost track of time, pushing past his own limits without a second thought. Normally, this didn't bother him. His body had long since adapted to sleepless nights, rushed meals, and the constant pressure of running an empire. But this time, he had pushed himself too far. Catherine noticed the change. The dark circles under Liam's eyes had grown more pronounced. His usually sharp features looked paler, and there was an exhaustion in his movements that even he couldn't hide. And then, one evening, while searching for a book in the mansion's library, she found him slumped over his desk. A strange sense of worry surged through her chest. "Liam!" she called out, but there was no response. She hurried to his side, pressing a hand against his forehead, burning hot. Her heart clenched. Liam Parker, always composed, always unshakable, was now vulnerable, just like anyone else. Without hesitation, Catherine draped his arm over her shoulders and struggled to lift him. He was tall, his frame solid and strong, but she gritted her teeth and managed to guide him, step by step, to his bedroom. Once she had settled him into bed, she rushed to fetch a warm cloth, gently placing it on his forehead to help lower his fever. Sitting beside him, watching his labored breaths, she realized something. For the first time, Liam Parker didn't look like the powerful millionaire on the cover of financial magazines. He just looked human, exhausted, weak, and alone. That night, Catherine didn't sleep. She remained by his bedside, carefully dabbing the sweat from his forehead, changing the cloth every so often. For the first time, she didn't see Liam as someone distant or untouchable. Beneath the cold exterior, beneath the rigid armor of a businessman, he was just a man, someone who had carried too much weight on his shoulders for too long. She thought back to the many nights when Leah was still small and had fallen sick. She had stayed up just like this, worrying over every fevered breath. The only difference was, this time the person she was taking care of wasn't her son. It was a man who, not too long ago, had been nothing more than a stranger. The next morning, a foreign feeling. The morning sun peeked through the curtains, casting a gentle glow across the room. Liam slowly opened his eyes, his throat dry and parched. He tried to move, but his body still felt sluggish and heavy with exhaustion. Then his gaze landed on the woman asleep beside his bed. Catherine. She was still in her simple sleepwear, her hair tied up hastily, her head resting lightly on the edge of the bed. The soft morning light illuminated her features, highlighting a quiet gentleness that Liam had never truly noticed before. Beside him, there was a glass of warm water, a damp cloth folded neatly on the nightstand, and the blanket carefully pulled up over him. For the first time in years, Liam felt cared for. He couldn't remember the last time someone had stayed up all night just to look after him. His ex-wife never had. To her, he had been nothing more than a machine, an unbreakable force meant to make money and uphold an image. His exhaustion, his struggles, they had never mattered. But Catherine was different. She had no obligation to take care of him. And yet she did. Liam shifted slightly, the sound stirring Catherine awake. She blinked sleepily, then quickly straightened up when she saw him watching her. "You're awake?" Liam held her gaze for a moment, his lips curving into a faint, tired smile. "Were you worried about me?" Catherine stiffened, then quickly turned away as if trying to hide the faint flush on her cheeks. "You need to rest. No one's going to steal your company while you're asleep." Her voice was composed, but there was an undeniable warmth beneath her words. Liam chuckled softly, a rare, genuine laugh. He had never thought that having someone care about him could feel like this. Maybe, just maybe, this was what it felt like to have a family. A late-night conversation, when two lonely souls collide. The mansion was silent, shrouded in the stillness of the late night. In the corner of the art studio, the soft glow of a lamp illuminated Catherine's unfinished painting. She was absorbed in her work, adding the final strokes to the canvas. Her hands moved instinctively, but her mind drifted elsewhere, lost in thoughts too distant to grasp. Outside the window, the sky was scattered with stars, shining in a quiet, peaceful beauty. Then came the sound of footsteps. Liam entered. He didn't announce himself. He didn't say a word. He simply sat down beside her, his gaze settling on the painting. Catherine continued painting, but she could feel his presence. The warmth of the room contrasted with the lingering distance between them. After a long moment, she broke the silence. "Why did you choose business?" Liam leaned back in his chair, his eyes drifting toward a faraway point in the room. His voice was deep, contemplative. "Because it was the only thing I could control." Catherine paused, turning to look at him. "Are you afraid of your own emotions?" Liam was silent for a moment, then let out a small, bitter smile. "I used to believe in love." His voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet studio it echoed clearly. Catherine didn't interrupt him. She just listened. "When I was younger, I thought that if I worked hard enough, if I gave it my all, I could have everything." His gaze darkened as though he were recalling memories long buried. "But the moment I failed for the first time, the people I trusted the most turned their backs on me." He let out a quiet chuckle, but there was no warmth in it. "There was only one person who helped me without expecting anything in return." Catherine blinked, sensing the raw honesty in his voice. He didn't say a name, but she knew. Her father. "He believed in me, even when I had nothing." Liam's voice dropped lower. "He told me I could succeed, but only if I didn't lose myself along the way." Catherine felt a tightness in her chest. She had never known how deeply her father's kindness had impacted Liam. After a moment, she hesitated before asking, "And your ex-wife?" Liam smiled again, but this time it was tinged with something almost painful. "She was everything to me. I thought I had found someone to share my life with." He paused, his fingers gripping the armrest slightly. "But in the end, I was just another stepping stone in her grand plan." Catherine clenched her fists. She didn't know the full story, but she understood the pain of being betrayed by someone you trusted. Liam turned to her then, his sharp eyes holding something softer, something unreadable. "What about you? Why did you give up painting?" Catherine let out a small, resigned smile. "You know, when I was younger, I thought I could live off my passion." Her fingers brushed against the paint on her hands as she spoke. "I believed that if I worked hard enough, I could become a real artist." She exhaled slowly before continuing. "But when you lose everything, dreams become a luxury." Liam didn't respond, his gaze steady but devoid of his usual coldness. Catherine kept going. "After my husband died, he didn't just leave me grief. He left me with a mountain of debt. I didn't have the luxury of dreaming anymore." She let out a quiet laugh, one that held no amusement. "Have you ever stood at a checkout counter, calculating whether you had enough money to buy your child an extra carton of milk?" Liam didn't answer, and she hadn't expected him to. They came from different worlds. He could never understand the kind of struggles she had faced, but what surprised her was that his expression didn't hold pity. He was simply listening. Catherine sighed, her voice softer now. "There were days when I was so exhausted, I wanted to give up. But then I'd look at Leo." Her voice trailed off, then she shook her head. "Sometimes I still dream about painting full-time, but it's just that, a dream. My son is the only reason I keep going." She turned to Liam then, meeting his gaze. "I don't know if I believe in anything anymore, but I know one thing. I can't let my son down." Liam remained silent, but Catherine noticed the way his hands curled tightly around the chair. A shared silence. A long silence stretched between them. No empty words of comfort, no grand promises that neither could keep. Just two lonely souls sitting side by side, understanding each other without the need for words. Both had known loss. Both had placed their trust in someone, only to be hurt in return. And both had no idea how to trust again. Liam exhaled deeply, his gaze shifting toward the window. "Catherine, when do you think people can truly let go of the past?" Catherine smiled faintly. the kind of smile tinged with sadness, when they find something worth starting over for. That night, they were no longer just two strangers bound by a contract. They were two people who had once been broken, still searching for something that could heal them. And for the first time, Catherine felt she could trust Liam. For the first time, Liam realized maybe he had found something more important than his career. The subtle changes. When they first started living together, Liam had kept his distance. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, change began to seep into his routine. He started coming home earlier. Before, work had always been his top priority, but now as the evening settled in, instead of staying late at the office, he found himself returning to the mansion, where a little boy eagerly waited to share his stories from school, and where a woman busied herself setting the dinner table. Dinners became a habit, no longer filled with heavy silence, but instead with Leo's laughter, Catherine's everyday musings, and even her sharp but honest remarks, ones that Liam found himself oddly appreciating. An unexpected favor. One day, Catherine had an important art exhibition. She had been preparing all day, barely having time for anything else. In the midst of her hurried preparations, she turned to Liam. "Can you pick up Leo from school today?" she asked, hesitating slightly. Liam studied her for a moment before nodding. That afternoon, for the first time in his life, Liam Parker didn't go to his office. Instead, he stood outside a kindergarten, waiting. The moment Leo spotted him, his face lit up with pure excitement. "Uncle Liam, you really came to pick me up?" "I did," Liam said, ruffling the boy's hair. "Today we're having a guy's day out." And so, instead of heading straight home, Liam took Leo to the zoo. For hours, the little boy laughed, pointing excitedly at the lions, the giraffes, the elephants, seeing them in real life for the first time. For the first time in years, Liam wasn't thinking about numbers, deals, or contracts. He was just there. A moment that felt different. That night, when Catherine returned home, she found something unexpected. Liam had fallen asleep on the sofa. A book of bedtime stories rested loosely in his hands. Leo, curled up on his chest, was breathing softly in deep sleep. Catherine stopped in her tracks. Something in her chest stirred, a warmth she couldn't quite name. And for the first time, she saw Liam Parker not as a businessman, not as the man who had made a contractual offer to her, but as someone who was slowly, unknowingly, becoming a part of her life. Catherine realizes she has changed when the heart finds peace. Catherine stood still in the middle of her art studio, her eyes tracing the nearly completed paintings before her. Soft strokes, harmonious colors, each canvas felt like a reflection of her soul, painted onto fabric. For the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. Not so long ago, her life had been a never-ending cycle of exhaustion, stress pressing down on her until she could barely breathe. She had raced against time, against overdue bills, against worries that never seemed to end. Every morning, the first thought that entered her mind wasn't, "What do I want to do today?" but "What do I need to do to survive?" She had learned to be strong, to stand firm for her son. She had grown accustomed to facing the world alone, never allowing herself to lean on anyone, because there had never been anyone to lean on. But now, standing here, in this space that was hers, a space where she could dream again, Catherine realized that everything had changed. She slowly set her paintbrush down and stepped out of the studio. Walking along the grand halls of the mansion, she watched as the evening sunlight streamed through the windows, casting soft golden patterns across the floor. She no longer felt like an outsider in this place. This wasn't just a lavish mansion anymore. It was home, a place where she no longer had to worry about whether she could afford the next bill. A place where every dinner wasn't just for her and Leo, but for a man who, though silent, was always present. A place where she no longer had to be strong all the time, because for the first time, there was someone strong enough to stand beside her. She stepped outside into the garden where Liam and Leo sat on the grass playing chess. Leo let out a bright, carefree laugh, shaking his head in delight as Liam pretended to lose. A simple scene, nothing extravagant. Yet it made something in her heart tremble. Liam Parker, the man she had once thought of as nothing more than a distant, cold millionaire. And yet he had given her something she hadn't had in years, a true sense of security. Not just in money or material things, but in protection, in peace, in the quiet reassurance of someone always standing behind her, allowing her the freedom to be herself. For the first time in years, Catherine no longer felt alone. She didn't have to fear the future. She didn't have to exhaust herself trying to be invincible, because now she knew. There was someone who wouldn't just help her stand tall, but someone who would help her fly. Catherine closed her eyes, drawing in a deep, steady breath. She had been running from this peace for so long. Maybe it was time she allowed herself to embrace it. Elena's return, when old wounds are reopened. That day, the Parker mansion was as quiet as ever, until she arrived. Elena. She hadn't sent word, hadn't announced her return. She simply appeared at the mansion's gates, looking as flawless as always. Her golden hair cascaded smoothly over her shoulders, her designer dress hugged every curve, and her piercing blue eyes shimmered with the confidence of someone who had never truly lost. She stepped into the living room, where Liam sat on the sofa, flipping through a contract. The moment he looked up and saw her, his eyes turned cold. "Elena!" His voice was low, devoid of emotion. Elena smirked, taking slow, deliberate steps toward him. "No greeting, Liam. We were married once." Liam set the papers down on the table, his expression unmoved. "Why are you here?" Elena shrugged, glancing around the mansion, her gaze lingering as if assessing what had changed. "I heard you got married." Liam didn't respond, but his eyes darkened slightly. She knew. Elena's lips curled into a taunting smile as she stepped closer. "Do you really think a contract marriage can create love?" Liam's jaw tightened. "Elena, I don't owe you an explanation." Elena let out a quiet laugh, her tone laced with sharp amusement. "Do you actually believe she loves you?" she said slowly, deliberately. "Do you think Catherine really has feelings for you? Or is she just using you?" Liam's hands clenched into fists, but he remained silent. Elena's gaze gleamed with something victorious as she tilted her head. "A contract marriage, a deal soaked in money. You think love can grow from that?" Liam's voice was steady but razor sharp. "A contract marriage is still better than a woman who sells herself for wealth and status." Elena's smirk faltered, but she quickly regained composure. "Tell me then," she murmured, stepping even closer. "Do you love her?" Liam didn't answer. Not immediately, and it was in that silence, that long, heavy silence, that Catherine, standing just outside the doorway, froze in place. She had heard everything. Her fingers tightened around the doorframe, her heart shattering into 1,000 silent pieces. Elena's words echoed mercilessly in her mind. She's just a contract wife using him. It didn't matter that they had shared quiet, vulnerable moments together. It didn't matter that he had helped her reclaim her dreams. It didn't matter that he had given her son a better life. Because in the end, to Liam, she was still just a contract wife. Nothing more. Maybe she had been foolish to think otherwise. Maybe she had let herself believe there could be something more. But the truth was painfully clear now. She was the only one who had fallen. With a quiet, unsteady breath, Catherine turned away. She had seen enough. She couldn't stay here any longer. The decision to leave. Catherine didn't wait. The contract was over. There was nothing left to hold her back. She packed her and Leo's belongings in silence, moving through the mansion like a ghost. Liam was away on a business trip. She didn't want to wait for him to return. She was afraid that if she saw him, if she looked into his eyes one last time, she wouldn't have the strength to leave. She had to go before her heart broke beyond repair. On the desk in Liam's study, she left a short letter. "Thank you for everything. Leo and I will start over. I wish you happiness." No anger, no accusations, no blame. Just a simple thank you. Then she took Leo's hand and walked out of the Parker mansion, without looking back. The empty house. Liam returned after a grueling week-long business trip, expecting to walk into the warmth of his home, expecting to see a woman waiting for him, expecting to hear a child's laughter echoing through the halls. But when he opened the door, only silence greeted him. Everything looked the same, untouched, in place. But something was missing. No sound of tiny footsteps running across the floor. No quiet figure at the dining table, smiling at him as he entered. No comforting scent of a home-cooked meal waiting in the kitchen. Liam walked to her room. It was empty. Her presence, every trace of her, was gone. All that remained was a single piece of paper on his desk. Thank you for everything. Leo and I will start over. I wish you happiness. Liam stood there gripping the letter, his chest tightening like a vice. He never thought losing her would feel like this. She wasn't just a responsibility. She wasn't just a woman he had helped. She wasn't just a promise he had made to her father. She was the woman he loved, and he had let her go. Was it too late, or was there still time to fix this? The art studio, the truth revealed. Liam didn't hesitate. He wasn't thinking like a businessman. He wasn't calculating risks or making rational choices. He was just a man searching for the woman he loved. When he stepped into Catherine's art studio, the first thing that caught his eye was the paintings. They weren't just art. They were pieces of their life together. A painting of a warm, intimate family dinner with him, Catherine, and Leo. A painting of him and Leo asleep on the sofa, the boy curled against his chest. A painting of him and Leo playing soccer under the sunlight, their laughter frozen in brushstrokes. And one that made his breath hitch. A painting of him adjusting a scarf for her. The Liam in the painting wasn't the cold, distant businessman the world knew. His expression was soft. His eyes were filled with warmth. She hadn't said the words out loud, but she had loved him. And yet, she had left. Why? A small voice broke his thoughts. Uncle Liam! Liam turned around. Leo stood there, holding a paintbrush in his small hands, his big brown eyes blinking up at him. Are you looking for my mom? Liam crouched down to the boy's level. Do you know where she is? Leo tilted his head, thinking. Then he whispered, Mom said she's okay, but I know she misses you. I miss you too. One simple sentence, and it shattered every hesitation left in Liam's heart. Catherine hadn't left because she didn't love him. She had left because she didn't believe he loved her. She had left because she was afraid. Afraid that this was just duty. Afraid that she was just another contract. Afraid that she had been the only one to fall. But now Liam knew the truth, and he wasn't about to let her go. Liam stood up, his jaw set with determination. He was going to find her. He was going to tell her the truth. He was going to prove to her. This wasn't obligation. This was love. Finding his way back to her. Liam found Catherine in a small art gallery in the heart of the city. She was carefully arranging her new paintings for an upcoming exhibition, but the moment she saw him step inside, her hands trembled. She hadn't expected him to come. She turned away, pretending to be busy, but her heart pounded wildly against her ribs. Liam didn't hesitate. He strode toward her, his voice low, rough, but unwavering. Why did you leave? Catherine took a deep breath, forcing her voice to stay steady. Our contract ended. I stayed long enough. It was time for me to go. Silence filled the space between them. Liam's gaze sharpened, but behind it, beneath the cool, unreadable exterior, was pain. A pain Catherine couldn't bear to face. Then his voice dropped lower, quieter, but filled with something she wasn't prepared for. So, to you, I was only a contract? Catherine's breath caught in her throat. She bit her lip, unable to answer. Liam stepped closer, too close, forcing her to look at him, forcing her to confront what they both had spent too long denying. His voice was no longer restrained. It was raw. It was real. And what about you? Do you really believe that everything between us was just a transaction? Catherine's chest tightened. She wanted to run. She wanted to push him away, but she couldn't because she knew the truth, and so did he. Liam's voice softened, yet held an undeniable certainty. You are a part of me, Catherine. You're not a clause in a contract. You're not an obligation. You are my family. I love you. Catherine's world stopped. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Tears blurred her vision as her lips trembled, fighting against the truth she had buried for so long. And then, in a whisper, broken, vulnerable, but real, I love you too. I've loved you for so long, but I was scared that I was the only one. Liam didn't hesitate. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, as if letting go meant losing her forever. I'm sorry, he whispered against her hair. I should have told you sooner. I should have never let you believe anything else. But now I'm not letting you go. Not again. Catherine broke down in his embrace, sobbing into his chest, every unspoken fear, every moment of doubt melting away in his warmth, every misunderstanding, every wound, every wall they had built around their hearts. All of it gone. Because this time, it wasn't about a contract, it was love. The grand art exhibition, a moment she never expected. Catherine's first solo art exhibition was more successful than she could have ever imagined. The gallery was packed. Critics, collectors, and art lovers filled the space, admiring her work. Praise poured in, not only for her technical skill, but for the depth of emotion that each piece conveyed. She should have felt proud, overwhelmed with joy, but something was missing. Liam wasn't there. She told herself it didn't matter, that she was fine. But deep down, she had hoped to see him among the crowd, hoped to meet his gaze filled with pride, hoped that, just maybe, he would be there for this moment. She tried to push away the disappointment until the lights in the gallery dimmed unexpectedly. The quiet hum of conversation shifted into curious whispers as guests turned toward the center of the room. Catherine followed their gaze, and her heart stopped. There, standing under the soft golden lights, was Liam, dressed in a sharp suit, looking as composed as always. But his eyes, they had never held so much emotion before. Behind him on the gallery wall hung a painting, a moment Catherine had captured with her own hands. A painting of a warm, intimate family dinner. Her, Liam, and Leo. Her breath hitched. He had seen it, and then he moved. Liam walked toward her with purpose, his steps steady, unwavering. The entire room held its breath. When he reached her, he pulled a small box from his pocket, and then he dropped to one knee. Catherine! Liam's voice was steady but filled with something raw, something real. You once told me that art was your dream, but did you know? You are mine. Catherine gasped softly, her hands trembling. Liam's eyes never wavered from hers. I used to believe love wasn't meant for me. But you and Leo changed that. You showed me what family means, what home feels like. He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that sparkled under the gallery lights. This time, I don't want a contract. I don't want an agreement. I just want you. I want us to be a real family. And then his voice softened. Catherine Yen, will you marry me? Tears spilled down Catherine's cheeks, but they weren't from sadness. They were from pure, overwhelming happiness. There was no hesitation. She nodded. Her voice trembled, but her answer was clear. Yes, I will. The gallery erupted into applause, but Catherine only saw him. Liam stood, slipping the ring onto her finger before pulling her into a tight embrace. And in that moment, she knew she had found her home. No contracts, no uncertainty, just love. 2 years later, inside the warm, sunlit mansion, laughter echoed through the living room. Leo, now 7 years old, ran around excitedly, a toy airplane soaring through the air in his hands. Careful, Leo, Catherine laughed, gently cradling the baby girl in her arms. Mia, the little one, cooed, her wide, blue-green eyes a perfect match for her father's. Liam leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his expression softer than ever as he watched his wife and children. Is my little princess giving you trouble? He stepped forward, brushing his fingers over Mia's tiny cheek. She immediately grasped his hand, her lips parting in a baby's attempt at a smile. Catherine chuckled. I think your daughter already knows how to rule this house. Liam smirked. Just like her mother. And then he leaned down, pressing a lingering kiss to his wife's forehead. A life without love had once been all Liam knew. Now he couldn't imagine a life without her, without them. They were his family, his greatest success, his forever. a love that was always meant to be. Catherine stood on the porch, watching the man she loved hold their daughter high in the air, her laughter ringing through the afternoon breeze. Her heart clenched, not in pain, but in a feeling so overwhelming it left her breathless. Liam Parker, the man she once believed was too cold, too rational, too distant to truly love, was now the most gentle, devoted father to their children. She had once convinced herself that their marriage was nothing but a contract, a carefully calculated arrangement. She had believed there was no place for her in his heart. She had been so wrong. Liam turned toward her, his steps unhurried, his expression soft as he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. His voice was deep, warm, the voice of a man who belonged to her in every way. If someone had told me a few years ago that I'd have a family like this, I wouldn't have believed them. Catherine smiled gently, resting her head against his shoulder, soaking in the warmth of the man she loved. "And now," she whispered, "do you believe it?" Liam didn't answer right away. Instead, he took her hand in his grip firm yet filled with something different this time, something deeper. Then he spoke. "Catherine, do you remember the first time I told you about the man who helped me when I lost everything?" She lifted her head, blinking up at him in surprise. "It was your father." Catherine froze. Liam's voice was steady, but for the first time, she saw the weight of emotions he had never spoken aloud. "Your father gave me a chance when no one else would. He didn't do it for money. He didn't do it for gain. He did it because he believed in me." Catherine's breath caught in her throat. She had never known, never suspected. Liam's grip on her hand tightened, as if anchoring her to this moment. "Before he passed, he asked me to take care of you." Her heart stopped. She had spent so long believing their marriage had been nothing but duty, that Liam had only helped her out of obligation. But now standing here, she realized it had always been something more. "At first, this wasn't about love," Liam admitted, his voice low but unshakable. "I thought I was simply keeping my promise to him. I thought I was just repaying a debt." He exhaled, his eyes locked onto hers. So raw, so honest, it unraveled her completely. "But I was wrong." He lifted a hand, gently tilting her chin up, forcing her to see the depth of truth in his eyes. "You weren't just an obligation, Catherine. You weren't just a promise I had to keep. You were my fate." Catherine's vision blurred as tears spilled down her cheeks. Every moment of doubt she had ever felt, every fear that she had been nothing more than a temporary presence in his life, all of it vanished. Liam cupped her face, his voice lower now. A confession, a vow, a truth he had held on to for too long. "You gave me something I never thought I could have. A family, a home." He looked at the little girl in his arms, then back at the woman he loved. "Thank you for walking into my life. Thank you for staying." Then softly, firmly, he said the words that finally broke her. "I love you." A sob escaped her lips, her body trembling not from pain, but from pure, undeniable happiness. She had spent so long convincing herself she had fallen alone, but he had fallen too. She let out a shaky laugh through her tears, gripping the front of his shirt. "I love you too, Liam." Liam let out a rare, genuine smile, one that reached his eyes. And then, without hesitation, he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly, as if letting go meant losing her forever. Catherine melted into him, pressing her face against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. For the longest time, she had thought happiness came from perfect beginnings. But now she knew. Sometimes happiness is built from broken pieces, from misunderstandings, from heartache, from taking a chance when everything feels uncertain. And most of all, happiness is built when two people decide to fight for it, together. She looked up at him, her husband, the father of her children, the man who had once been nothing but a stranger. Now he was her home, and she knew she would cherish this moment forever. Thank you for following this heartfelt story. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together.